Hello and welcome to the Women Walks series. I'm so excited to be with you here today. My name is Angela Adsit and I will be your host today. I am actually in beautiful Kelowna. We are house sitting here now. We're super excited. It's a beautiful city to be. And the Women Walk series is all about discussions with women who have walked their journey with grace, power, and love. And today, not only is my dear friend here with me, but when I got this idea to do this, she was the first person that popped into my mind. She's just a wonderful friend. She has an incredible story, and her name is Margo LaBerge. Margo LaBerge was born with a disability and yet overcame many obstacles. She lives with passion, purpose, and possibilities, and a give it a go attitude. Bravely choosing to say yes to unexpected opportunities has taken her to places and experiences she has never dreamed of. Margo has traveled to 24 countries, lived in New Zealand, and has met people from all walks of life. And today she's going to share her personal journey of risk, trust, and adventure. So, welcome, my dear friend Margo, to the show. I'm very excited you are here. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about who you are today.
Well, thank you, Angela. It's a pleasure for me and a blessing to be part of your inaugural first show. And I love the name that you chose for this series that you're going to be talking to different women, because we all have walked a different journey and we all have been given different journeys. And the way that we have walked that journey, for me as a faith-filled person, God has been a big part of that. And whether we're wearing running shoes or high heel shoes or comfortable slippers, the journey is all part of who we've become. And so congratulations on choosing this name. I think it's very appropriate for what you're wanting to do. And in brief, I have married my high school sweetheart, and we've been married for 47 years, which sounds like a really long time, but it isn't.
Tom is wonderful, a wonderful man.
He is a wonderful man. And so we have had many adventures together. I've had lots of adventures on my own. And we have two daughters, two adult daughters, and four grandchildren that we love to bits. And so, again, we've shared that journey with our children and lots of the things that we've done. And we continue to share that journey with my husband working. Now that he's retired, he's working for our daughter in her business called Jasic Chocolates. So he's gone from a pipe fitter to a chocolate maker, which is nothing that we had ever dreamed of. And yet, again, opportunities that we've been given in our own lives, we've always been able to kind of say yes to after prayer and discernment. And that has always turned out in our favor. Not that we haven't had any hiccups or bumps, but generally the peace that comes with making the right decision has been there most of the time.
That's wonderful. I can't wait till you share your journey with others. I've heard, of course, many parts of it and have always been very inspired by your story and definitely your give it a go attitude. At the end of the show, I know that you're going to have a special gift for everyone that has attended. I'm really excited that you're going to be able to share your chapter in your book. And that in itself is just, it's a wonderful little glimpse into your life and encouragement that everyone will have an opportunity to read. So again, thank you, Margo. And if you're ready, we can jump right into the story.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
when I was born, I was the first child of my parents. So, of course, there was great excitement. And I was named after my grandmother, Marguerite. But as I grew into the first few months of my childhood, my parents realized that there seemed to be an issue with my vision. And so after, doctors and different ophthalmologists and different eye specialists, they discovered that I had been born with congenital cataracts. And so I have never had any vision in my right eye. I only have vision in my left eye. And so that led to a series of challenges for myself growing up. Nothing that I couldn't overcome, but I give that grace to my parents, who are always very encouraging. It was never, Margo can't do that because she can't see on that side, or Margo can't do this because whatever excuses. They gave me the tools to figure things out for myself without being overprotective. And being a mom myself, I don't know if I would have done as well as they did in terms of encouraging me and protecting me and making sure that I was able to do most things that everybody else does. And I figured out how to do things that would work for me. So I had many surgeries. If I was born today, I would probably have vision in that eye. But in those days, the technology was not there as it is now. And my grandmother had even offered to donate one of her eyes to me. Which, now that I look back, was a real gift of her love for one of her grandchildren, right? But they didn't do that in those days. And so what they did, and they thought they were doing the right thing at the time, is they removed the lens in my right eye, which I don't understand what the motive was behind that. But again, technology was not what it is now. And so I've never even had a lens in my eye. So no matter, after I saw, as I grew up and tried different things to see whether it would work, you can't just have a lens transplant because your brain would not pick up what it has missed. Your brain kind of learns how to do whatever. So for example, if I was to have vision in my right eye by some miracle, I would probably be very disoriented. I would probably fall over and walk into things. Just like if you were to cover one of your eyes with your hand and try to walk around and do stuff, you would be completely disoriented because my brain hasn't learned over the years to be able to acknowledge any vision there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and with that came that I don't have a very good sense of smell. So I've never really been able to smell very well. So, asking my mom, did she have the measles? Was there something that she had? And again, in those days, they weren't really tracking that stuff very much. So it's not a hereditary thing because I did get it checked when I was ready to have children. So God knows why. And in some way, I'm almost grateful to have had this disability in the sense that it has given me that give it a go attitude that you spoke about beforehand. It's like my motto has always been, what's the worst that could happen? And because of that, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. And my parents never really talked a lot about what do you want to be when you grow up. It was more about who do you want to be when you grow up.
That's beautiful.
And I think that has stuck with me because, I've changed careers a few times, and that has kind of stuck with me. Who do I want to be? And I think it's made a difference in the choices that I've made and in the people that I've met, the people that I've circled myself with, and of course, the love of my family. My siblings, my husband, his family, our daughters have all made that difference as well.
Wow. That's beautiful. Can I ask you, Margo, what were some of the things that your parents did, to help you to move forward despite not being able to have full vision? What were give me an example if you
Well,
want.
for example, when I started school, you learned how to print and how to write, and you had to have the book that you were copying from on one side of the desk and not the other. Well, I couldn't see on that side. And so I started to complain. And it was simple, like, how about if you put the book on the other side of your desk? You'll be able to see from that side. So it was just little strategies like that. I've never been very good at baseball or racket sports because I couldn't see where the ball was coming from, obviously, on that hand. And when I tried with the left hand, it still didn't work because you need to have the distance and all that kind of stuff. And I also can't see anything 3D because in order to see 3D, you need to have two eyeballs. And so,
Wow.
and I tried it once going to a 3D movie, and I was so nauseous that I had to walk out because, you have the 3D glasses, and it was just like this blur vision and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, so those are just the things that is kind of like, okay, I'm not great at baseball or racket sports, but there's other things that I can do. So I became a cheerleader because I like to sing.
I love it. Tell me about it.
There was always something else that could be done, right?
Yeah.
Basketball, same kind of thing. Not great. I figure skated because that was a lone sport. I could manage that by myself. And so they gave me opportunities to try different things that and suggestions that I knew that I couldn't do very well. And it wasn't like, oh, poor me, I can't. It was like, well, let's see what else I can do instead. So, tried other avenues.
Wow. I have to give it to you because I took figure skating too, and I couldn't do it with two eyes. I could I could barely stand my skates, let alone try to do a twirl or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, I had to twirl the little feather and the little tutu thing for the figure skating, and I love that part of it as well.
Oh, that makes sense. I can see that about you.
Yep.
Oh, what an incredible story. Have you you know, there were plenty, like some things that you couldn't do, but was there anything that you felt that you could do better? Maybe because you only had one eye or you didn't have to rely so much on both eyes? Have you ever thought about that? I don't know.
I know I haven't really thought about it because I don't know any different, right? Like
True.
if you were to lose vision one eye, you know the difference of what it would be to have one or two, but I've never known that difference. And my husband had the experience when he was welding. He got a flash in one of his eyeballs, so he had a patch on his eye. Well, it was like he was drunk because he kept walking into things. His balance was all off. And he kept saying, how do you do this? But that's all I know. And so I think the Lord gave me the acceptance of this is the way it is. This is who I am. And so I just I've never had a pity party about it. And I've never been angry at God because I have this deficiency, disability. I've never considered it a disability in the sense of, like, poor me. It's always been, well, how can I do things with what I have?
Well, it's so beautiful. I love, that your parents' focus was not on, what are you going to be, but who are you going to be? I mean, that's brilliant. That's
Mm,
just a brilliant way to raise your kids because at the end of the day, it is everything about our life boils down to who we are. Because occupations, careers, events, experiences change constantly. But that core of our very being, and what we choose to build that on
mm.
is everything.
And it is. It is. So, I have never been super career focused. And I think because of that, I've had opportunities that I never dreamed of that the Lord kind of put in my path. And so I wasn't stuck in one career or one, I've always been about people.
Mhm.
And that I know that I'm a people person. Like, don't stick me behind a desk somewhere where I have no people interaction because I would wither and be very sad and not be able to use the gifts that God's given me because I know that I'm meant to be with people, regardless of what capacity that's been in and all the different things that I've had the opportunity to do.
And what a blessing. Here we are because we met at a
Yes,
women's event, right? I mean, and all these years later, we talked about that several times. I don't know how many years ago that was, but
I know, and it felt like we'd known each other all our life, and we just, yeah.
oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know, based on what the value that we want to deliver to our listeners, the first point was to share something that, maybe made you feel a little bit vulnerable, and you shared about, your eye. And is there any other event in your life where you might have felt really vulnerable that you'd like to share?
Sure. There was, we got married when I was, fairly young, and our plan had been, okay, well, we'll work for a bit, and then, wanted to start a family, and that didn't occur in the timeline that we had thought in our heads. And so time went on. My friends were all having babies. My sister was younger than me, had a baby, and we just were having difficult, fertility issues. And
Mm.
so we continued to pray, but little did I know that my sister belonged to a prayer group in up north in Fort McMurray, and they had started praying for me. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, things started to happen. And I got pregnant, and first pregnancy I had was a miscarriage. And so
Mm.
that was a big blow. Like, will this ever happen for us? So there was a lot of disappointment, especially when I was having tests at the hospital to see like maybe what kind of fertility issues was I dealing with. And here were women who were having abortions in the same room as me, waiting to go into surgery to see what was happening. And so from that time on, I really have a heart for number one, women who are having trouble getting pregnant, and also the flip side, these women were having abortions and killing their babies, and I couldn't have any. It was like, what's wrong with this picture? Why,
Mm.
Lord, can't I? And these people are killing their babies. Like, it didn't make any common sense to me. So since that point, I've always been involved with the pro-life movement too, in one aspect of it or another. And then fast forward, we had the miscarriage. And then 2 years later, I was able to conceive, did the bed rest and did everything. And, had our beautiful first daughter, Jacqueline. And then 2 years later, Corinne was born. So that was a highlight in our lives, in the sense of that we were able to have the children that we always wanted.
Wow. And I know abortion is a very hot topic. Um, I was a teenage mom, as you know, and that was the first thing that the doctor presented to me. And, as my heart goes out to women
Hmm.
that feel like they have to make that choice, and we have no idea what the reasons are. I was very fortunate in that I had the support. But let me tell you, if situations had been different, you just never know. It's so hard. And
So
so,
hard. And I certainly don't judge anybody who has had an abortion. I
yeah,
know people who have.
yeah,
We are not here to judge them, and I know that they never make that decision lightly.
yeah.
Um, but like I say, that's still a part of some of the time that I like to devote to or support financially is that, so that there can be more resources out there, so that people do know that there are choices.
Absolutely,
Mm,
absolutely, and, yeah, I was part of the pro-life movement for many years as well, and, trying to offer that support as well to the women that were having to make that decision,
mhm,
and, yeah, I do believe that, you know, um, whatever way we can help is much needed.
mm,
But yes, that I can imagine sitting there and wanting so desperately to have a child and knowing that this woman is going to
yes.
choose not to carry her child to term would be very, very difficult. And it's amazing that, you didn't get angry at God.
No, I didn't. And that's a grace. That's the only thing I can think of, is that a grace that my husband and I were given. First a miscarriage, and then having, issues and all those things.
Mhm.
I can't recall a time in my life where I have been angry with God. And maybe that's because I was raised with an optimistic or positive attitude,
Yeah.
and thinking, well, you know, there's the old thing, there must be a reason, but sometimes that just becomes cliche. And so I think that we grow when things don't go the way that we want to. And for me, that made me rely on my faith that much more,
Mhm.
knowing that the journey that I was walking, now that we're talking about shoes and all those good things, that Jesus was walking beside us during that difficult
Mhm.
time.
Yes, faith is so important,
Mm,
isn't it?
yes,
It's so important in the journey.
yes, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that there's many women that can relate to, not only having, like you said, you don't see it as a disability, but others might.
Mm,
I'm sure there's many women that can relate to that, or wanting something, so strongly, and for not understanding why it's not happening. Infertility is a big issue. I know I've dealt with many women in my health and wellness business that, can't have children, and it's very, very difficult.
Oh, it's
So
heart-wrenching, especially when everybody around you is having children and they have more than one, and you're still kind of not knowing if that will ever happen. Yeah,
yes.
it was a very difficult time. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. Okay, so the A is affect and action. So how did these life situations affect you emotionally, physically, socially, mentally, spiritually? And what actions did you take to overcome or move through these challenges?
Well, I think we all have definite personalities, that we may have inbred or inherited, but there's also some qualities or that we can develop ourselves. And so, like I mentioned previous, I've never really had a big pity party about some of the things that haven't worked out the way that I wanted them to.
Mhm.
Um, when there's things that I thought that I could do or could work out, I would go ahead and try. I'm a possibilities person, and that's been a big word in my life, and all the things that I've done that I've been fortunate enough to do, and that's because I've said yes to maybe when people would say no. And so with the hard times when people would offer suggestions, and sometimes I go, here we go again, I've heard this one, but I would still follow up and try to explore the information that people were giving me, whether it was miscarriage or, we should try this because of your vision, or there's new technology out there or whatever. I always looked into it. I never brushed anything off, because usually when people mention something, always it's in good spirits, and it's in, the best for that they wanted for me. So I never closed any doors. The doors are closed by themselves because it didn't work out. And I accepted that. And so
Yeah.
I think acceptance for me has been a big one, but also the word possibilities. And that's kind of how we raise our girls. The word possibilities, kind of moving ahead in my life is when I've had different careers. So I've worked in health for quite a long time until I was in my 40s. I worked in the health. And then we had an opportunity just as I turned 40 when my husband's job, whether he had been for 23 years, went to work one day and the company was closed. It had been bought out by a German company. We had no idea this was happening. And he came to see me where I was working and said, I just lost my job. And I was like, what? Like, we had no expectation that this was even going to be happening. So anyways, both of us, having trust in God, said, well, when the Lord closes the door, he opens a window. And that window opened like 3 days later. Uh, when we went skiing with our daughters, we had planned this ski trip. We were in Calgary at friends. And he saw this little bitty ad that said, looking for pipefitter welders in New Zealand. And New Zealand had always been on our bucket list to go on a holiday. But then it was just like, what do you think if we went to New Zealand? So we had a family meeting with our two daughters, who were 13 and 15 at the time. They had only ever gone to a francophone school, so only ever gone to school in French. And we had a family meeting and said, what do you girls think about moving to New Zealand? And they were game. So after some prayer, we had friends praying with us and for us at the same time, and with the girls, we decided, what's the worst that can happen? We use that phrase a lot. And it's like, well, we'll go. And if we don't like it, we'll come back. So within 4 months, we filled out all the required paperwork. I felt like I'd earned a university degree after filling out all the passport and becoming permanent residents and everything. But everything fell into place. So within 4 months, we left to go to New Zealand. We're from a small community of 1,200 people. My husband was involved in municipal politics. We'd never gone anywhere else. And this was the days before HGTV, travel and move to a different country. Uh, we were one of those people. So we sold everything we had, left with these two teenagers with 2 suitcases each, and went across the planet. And it was the best thing, because usually your children are born into your household and you kind of have all the Tupperware and all the bits and pieces. But we moved there and had nothing except what we brought in our suitcases. And so we started a household again with our teenagers, garage sales, secondhand stores, whatever else we needed. And we rented for the first 6 months. And then we had a family meeting and decided, are we staying? And we stayed for 10 years. And so, it was a challenge. The girls went to an all-girls school, had to wear uniforms. Everything was in English. They did really well in their French classes uh, over there. And they both did their university degrees in Wellington. And from that point on, when we made that huge decision about moving, leaving all our loved ones, everything we knew behind, and then I ended up getting a job at the college, at the girls' college, working as a college chaplain. And that opened a whole other possibilities and work and travel for me because of working in the school system. So I took the courses that were required and did a lot of traveling from that side of the world, if you like.
Wow. What a journey. Well, it's like like we had read in your bio, you chose to do that,
Mm.
right? Yeah, it's all about choice. Like you could have decided, no, we've been in this town of 1,200 people. You grew up there, right?
Yes, yes,
I mean, so you were 40, you'd lived there 40 years in a
yes,
little teeny weeny town in Alberta, and now you're moving across the world.
exactly. With two teenagers in tow and getting rid of all of our stuff. And so from then again, we taught the girls it's not about the amount of stuff we have, it's only stuff. Those things that were precious, we took a few photos and then sold it or passed it on to someone else. So we're talking furniture, all their baby stuff, we had made a little box for each of them with some of the precious things that were precious to them at the time. They had that in their suitcase and it's only stuff. So fast forward 10 years, uh, came back when I was 50 and started all over again because we left everything behind in New Zealand, sold our house there, left everything behind, and started again. So I don't have any old stuff hanging around.
Well, I guess one of the benefits is you always get new stuff.
Well, exactly. And you only buy what you really need, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So
Wow.
then came back at 50 and then had an opportunity to start a new career, again, working with Alberta Health, but doing adult education for medical professionals. And so I've been doing that for the past 15 years. And during that time, um, got an opportunity to kind of branch out as well. And I'm now working as a funeral celebrant with different funeral homes around this area. And again, the short story of that was too much coffee, can't sleep. And the Lord put on my heart, go check out Funeral Celebrant. I wasn't even really sure what it was. So looking on the computer and I found, Insight books that does funeral training, funeral celebrant training. So at 2:30 in the morning, I woke my husband up and said, I'm going to be a funeral celebrant. And he, good man that he is, that's awesome. Rolled over and went back to bed. But the next day I called the States and asked when they were coming to Canada. And the lady there, Glenda, said, we're coming to Calgary on Monday and we have one place left. And this was a Friday morning that I had called her. And so I rearranged my work schedule and left for Calgary the following week and did the training there. And so have done many, many funerals where I, meet with families, I support them, and I'm the one who actually officiates the service. Now, I still certainly believe in church funerals, but not everybody wants a church funeral. And so that's where I come in and can support the family in the best way that I can.
Wow. That's beautiful. You live a life of service.
Yes, yes. I need purpose. And I think
Yeah.
we all need purpose, regardless in what way that is.
Yeah.
We're all called to service and mission.
Mhm.
And I think, we try in what we choose to do, my husband and I choose to do, that's always part of it.
Yeah.
He's a man of service as well. He's always willing to help people. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, so leading that life of service and mission has led us to, like you said in the bio, possibilities we never dreamed of.
So, question, amazing things have come out of, despite a job loss, which many of us
Mm-hmm.
me included, have experienced. Um, it can be devastating, and especially when it's sudden like that. But your ability to say, okay, what's next? What's next, and not be anxious about it really shines through. And that goes back to what you said, I think, where you said, you just accept it. And when
Mm.
you accept things for what they are, especially things you have zero control over, that in itself alleviates any anxiety, I would think, or it lessens it
It
at the very.
lessens it, and I also don't live out of fear,
Yeah.
because fear is a big one. It's like with fear, we can think of all the worst things that can happen,
Mhm.
but trusting in, well, for me, trusting in God and knowing, okay, I might feel a little bit of fear or trepidation, but I
Mhm.
don't let that overwhelm the choices that we make,
Yeah.
because fear is horrible. When you live in fear all the time, you can't move, you can't walk, as that's our theme. You can't
Yeah.
walk with one foot one foot in front of the other, because you get stuck
Yeah.
and you're not moving.
Yeah. It's paralyzing.
It's paralyzing. And so
Yeah.
you're probably walking backwards more than you're moving forward.
Yeah.
And we feel blessed for all the experiences we've had in the past. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But we don't try to live in the past as such, right? Because God always is opening doors. We don't know what's going to happen, but there's always that expectancy of, what's going to happen next? So January of every year is an exciting time for me. It's not doom and gloom, what's going to happen. It's more like, okay, what's going to happen this year? And so, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. What's the worst that can happen? It's like I taught my kids too. I said it's more important to know what you don't want than
mhm.
to think you know what you want. Because what you don't want, has come from experience, but you tried it at least,
Yes, exactly.
right? I mean, if you never try anything, if you don't take any risks, then you'll never know what you don't want. You'll always just think you know what you want, which you don't really know until you've done it, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
it kind of aligns with, be careful what you wish for. Like,
Yes.
not everything you think you want, you necessarily really want.
Yes. Yes. And then when you have that thing, whether it's a material thing or not,
Mhm.
then it's like, okay, that wasn't so great,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not really what I was expecting. And so, and I've learned a lot from all the travels that I've done. I had an opportunity, my husband and I had an opportunity to travel to Japan with our girls when they were younger, and living in the culture, because we were living with families. From New Zealand, I got to go and teach English in China before the Beijing Olympics. And so, again, I don't speak one word of Chinese. And that was a God thing. Got a phone call on a Thursday. Are you available to come to China? We're leaving on Monday to teach English. And we're just like, just give me a few minutes. So call him up, and he's always been very supportive, and he's let me fly to be who I was meant to be. And a lot of husbands may not have done that. They're more, you've got to, he's very different than I am, which is why we probably complement each other in a way. But on the other hand, he's as adventurous as I am, but he's never held me back. And I think
Mm,
that's helped me to become who I am now. Or I've done
yes.
things on my own, like going to China to teach English for a month with two people I didn't really know. But I just made my way, and I chalked it all up to experiences, and I learned so much about the culture and the people that the young people that I taught, um, from going and taking a group of students to Europe for a month. That I was working with, and visiting different countries. So all those things have led me to where I am now. Like, if something was to happen to me tomorrow, I would not have any regrets. And I think that's a gift, because
Mhm.
we've done everything we thought that we'd wanted to do. And so we're not growing, not that we're growing older, but as we advance in life with more wisdom,
As you mature.
as we mature with more wisdom, we don't have any regrets. It's not like, oh, gee, we should have done this. Oh, gee, we should have done that. We've done it.
Yeah.
And so the lessons we've learned along the way have taken us to the point we're at now, where it's like we've lived a life with no regrets. And I think that's the biggest mistake people can often make, is they've regretted things that they've done or not done. And I see that a lot with families that I meet with after one of their loved ones passes, is that
Yes.
regret.
Wow, that's powerful,
Yeah,
and I totally agree. David and I often talk about, okay, well, you know, if we don't do this, will we regret that we didn't do it?
yes, yeah,
And again, what have we got to lose? What's the worst that can happen?
yeah. So I think
Um,
regret and forgiveness are the two of the biggest lessons that I've learned
mm,
um, throughout the people I've met on my life journey, and working in the ministry and profession of grief and funeral celebrants, is because I meet with them, and you often hear, I wish I would have, I wish I would have been able to talk to them and ask them for forgiveness for whatever it might be. I haven't
mm,
talked to my family member for 25 years and now it's too late. And so forgiveness is such a key thing, um,
yeah,
for people to, like, when things are not going, to not wait and wait and wait
yeah,
for the right time, because that right time will never come. You have to step out and just deal with the forgiveness, deal with the elephant in the room.
yes.
And the sooner you do that, the more you'll live your life with some peace.
And, you've heard this as well, I'm sure that, unforgiveness doesn't really affect the other person. It keeps you in prison,
That's right.
and so you're so right. We have to forgive, and sometimes it's really hard. I mean, the family that, that I come from, and my dad's story, and you've heard it, and one day I'll share it here as well. But forgiveness is the key,
Hmm.
and that is incredible. Well, I've been encouraging you to write a book about your all your stories.
It's coming. One chapter is done.
Yeah, yeah, finish it. Yeah. So I mean, because I'm sure, like you said, like you would learn how to live by listening to the stories of death and loss from others. It
Hmm.
would actually teach you how to live more fully, I'm sure.
Yes, you can't help but do that, to live fully alive, because there
Yeah.
are so many people that are alive, but they're not living out either their life purpose or passion. They're just going to work for the money angle of it, and which I can understand. We all need to eat and feed our families, but if you can love what you do, it makes your life journey that much better
Mhm.
in what you're choosing. And sometimes you don't have any choices, and I certainly understand that.
Yeah.
Um, and I talk about that in the chapter that I wrote about how I've had a couple of jobs that I knew I was not working in my gifting,
Mm.
and I hated them.
Yeah.
And so that's why the jobs I've had mostly in my life, I've had for a long time, because I know that that's what I was meant to be doing at that time. The one particular job that I had for 2 weeks, I just knew that job wasn't for me, and so I quit.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
it's not easy to quit sometimes, or
Yeah.
to say, because I'm not a quitter in anything that I've done. But when you know that you're not doing the right thing,
Yeah.
we've all got different gifts.
Mhm.
Then I think people need to step back and take a look
Yeah.
at where they're getting their energy from. And when you're in the right job, you have energy for what you're doing. It gives you life, and you don't just look forward to the weekend, so you don't have to go to work.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to that. Make sure, find out try different things, and maybe you won't like it, and that's totally okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's totally okay. Wow. Thank you. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, on lessons learned. You mentioned, forgiveness, and I'm sure that's been really brought to the forefront through your funeral celebrant work that you do. Um, taking risks. What's the worst that can happen? But if there's women out there that are, have gone through similar things, maybe they, haven't been able to conceive, or they have what they consider to be a disability, or maybe others look at them and think is a disability. What lesson would you want to share with them to help them work through these similar issues as you did?
I think it's like with anything, if you have a positive attitude, and not look at yourself like I'm not good enough. Because often women have that I'm not good enough,
Mhm.
whether that's to work, to if they're in relationships that are not healthy for them. Like it can be a myriad of things. And
Mhm.
if you well, for me anyway, it was okay, I have been created this way. There's nothing that I can do to change that. And I am good enough because I am here. God has created me this way. And we all have different ups and downs. But to be positive, and in no matter what, I am good enough. Disability, no disabilities, anger, all those kinds of things. Because sometimes a lot of anger and frustration comes from thinking, I'm not good enough. And we are all good enough. We've all been created for that.
Yes, and again, that goes back to your who you are,
Mm.
which is based on your foundation of faith. But what about women that just can't get beyond that and just, maybe they have had, situations where they did not have supportive parents like
Mhm.
yours.
Mhm.
They've never had a supportive spouse. They've been knocked down over and over and over again by even their parents, their siblings, their partners. How can you what would let us how would you tell them to live in that truth? Because they are enough, but how would you
I
tell them to
know,
do
and that's a really good question. I think the answer would be different for each individual, knowing what their circumstances are. I think, well, I would hope that everybody has at least one person in their life, whether it's a friend, a medical professional of some kind, or someone they've met along the way, that can be an encourager for them because it's not easy. And I, I don't know what this. I don't know what those answers could be because I think they would be different. But I think you need to have an encouraging person in your life, somebody who will not put you down, who will love you for where you're at, and who accepts you for who you are. Because I think a lot of
Mhm.
times people are feeling they're not good enough because they themselves have not even accepted who they are.
I think you hit it right on the nose right there. I think it does start with that self-acceptance
Yes.
first.
Yeah.
Um, to love yourself first
Hmm.
and sometimes we have to do a friendectomy, like, right? I mean, sometimes we do if we really love ourselves. We often do things to ourselves that we would never do to other people
Hmm.
or say to other people, but we say it and do it to ourselves. So, yeah, I think that self love and acceptance is the key. And once you are in that headspace and then you have the strength, I believe, to do what you need to do.
And walk forward.
Yes, and move forward.
Yeah.
Not an easy task,
Not
but
an
there
easy task at all, and certainly, my life has not been a fairy tale, but with the ups and downs that we have had, that I have, personally experienced, that has been a key thing, is to
Mhm,
try to remain positive, and when you're not feeling great, to have somebody there who can encourage you. And
mhm.
often I like to flip that around, and how can I be encouraging to others if someone's having a difficult time? How can I be that encourager and that listener? Because I think listening is a huge thing as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's very interesting because if from what I've read, different people dealing with depression or anxiety tips, that's usually the number one tip is if you're sad, go and help someone else.
Yes.
You know, um,
And is
yeah,
yeah, that thing of service and mission that we talked about at the beginning. I think
yeah,
when we're and it can be like, it doesn't have to be this big monumental, we're going to save the world. It's that cup of coffee that you can have with a friend or somebody that you
yes,
know. And even if somebody that you don't know that well, just by
yeah,
calling them up and letting them know that you're thinking about them and that there's
yeah,
something I can do to help,
yeah.
and being specific about how you can help. And again, I've learned that with in the field of grief. People say, "Oh, just call me if you need something." we need to be specific, whether it's grief or someone's going through a difficult time, saying, I will bring you dinner on Monday night and I'm going to bring you a chicken casserole with whatever, being specific. I'm going to come and
Mm.
clean out your pantry. I'm going to come over and do your laundry. When we can be specific like that and be more of service by acknowledging what it is that we're going to do, it makes it more real and more, I think, easier for the person to accept, because often we don't want to be accepting charity or thinking, oh
Mhm.
yeah, they don't think I can do this myself or whatever. But when you're giving it in a loving way by being, offering whatever it is that you can, I think it can make a difference.
That's a great tip, Margo, is to be specific when you're offering help to
Mhm.
others. Even in our own grief, if you find somebody else that's going through a grief of some sort, what is it that you would love for someone to do for
Mhm.
you? Maybe it's to bring that chicken casserole. So maybe that's something that you can then turn around and do it for someone else. That's brilliant. And it'll make you feel better, makes the other person feel better. And
And often no words are required. I
yes,
think too often we tend to think, what am I going to say if it's a grief situation or in a situation where somebody's having some issues and difficulty. It doesn't have to be, grief as in somebody who passed. It can be grief in the sense of lost a job, lost a husband, someone's moved away, a good family, a good friend, and you're dealing with that. So grief comes in a whole bunch of different ways, and so we can use the same tools, if you like, no matter what it is that a person is having difficulties with.
hmm,
And we don't have to be chatting the whole time, which can be hard because we want to offer suggestions. We want to be, saying, well,
going through
going
something.
through something, and we kind of want to. And
I
I
don't want
sometimes,
to talk to
yeah, and
someone.
I sometimes have trouble with that because I kind of want to help them and make it
Yeah,
better, but we can't. So we have to be
yeah.
better listeners.
Well, I think as women, we are nurturers. Like,
Yes.
if something's wrong with our kids, it's like, I want to deal with it now,
Mm.
or our girlfriends, or, you know, yeah, but yeah, you're right. It's a process of maturing, like you say, as we get older and we've experienced more of life and more hurts of our own, then we learn to listen more.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, understanding in our value statement here. So, what is the one, if you wanted the ladies listening today to take away one thing, what do you want them to really understand, to make it part of themselves, to just become who they are, to infuse into their being? What would that be?
I think acknowledging that we were all created for a purpose. And people can go through life, and I'm not the expert, but knowing how you can make a difference in one person's life and acknowledging that, because we all need to feel needed. And there is a void there when we don't have people that we can either share with or care or look after or whatever. And that comes with being happy with who you are within yourself. And we're not perfect. And I don't, we all have things we need to improve in our lives. Um, and again, it's not always easy to be positive,
Mhm.
but we can self-talk ourselves into things that can make a difference in, number one, trying it. And if we fail, it's okay. At least we've tried. Because if we don't, then it's going to be, we're going to, this whole thing about regret that we talked about earlier, then comes through.
And failure is not, when you start over again, you're not starting from the beginning, you're starting from experience.
Exactly. And failure is not a bad thing. That's how we learn. And I think
It's
we
the
need to teach
best
our young
thing.
people that more, that it's okay to be a failure. That didn't work. So let's try something else. I
Yeah.
think the word fail is misused in lots of ways because it makes it sound like such a negative connotation as opposed to a learned thing. I learned from this experience and now I can move forward.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, that's brilliant. I love that. Take the leap of faith.
Mm.
Um, reach out to others in your own hurt. I'm just kind of recapping here if I'm missing anything. To accept, to acknowledge that, yes, you have these challenges, but take the actions to move forward. And they're not really disabilities, they're the ability to do life in your way.
Exactly. And we all have our way of doing it. And
Yeah,
there's not a right or a wrong. And I think if
yeah,
people look at that, so mine was, not much smell and I can't see, but others can be something else that's more physical. And sometimes I'm quite aware that my eye doesn't really go where I would like it to go because I can't see. But that's okay. I have not let that stop me from doing things like today.
yeah. Well, and it's
Because some people might say, "Oh no, my eye," that whole thing. But I don't go there even. It's like this is the way it is. I'm not going to change it, so I just deal with it.
well, it's funny because being your friend for so long, I mean, I don't even notice it. I mean,
Well,
nobody noticed.
yes,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I know exactly. And I can still drive and do all those other things.
Yeah. But I have to say, for someone who can't smell, you make amazing food.
Thank you.
Ah, no, yeah, you have the best bed and breakfast house.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yes, we love having visitors, and we get a lot of them.
Yes, yes, and that's another one of your gifts is entertaining and hosting, and because that's your service, that's your heart of
Yes, and
service.
hospitality. I know I learned that again from my mom. She's going to be
Mm,
89 years old, and even when we go see her, what can I prepare for you? She always wants to serve us something, and so that's something that has kind of been inbred with our family.
that's beautiful. Yeah, she's a lovely lady. Lovely lady. Last point here. So you have done all these incredible things. You have chosen to take risks and literally have no idea, especially like moving to New Zealand and stuff like that. No idea, but just went by faith and took that leap and that adventure. But is there anything when you look back that you would be the accept? I'm happy, except I'm happy how everything turned out, except I wish I had done this one thing differently, or I wish I had done that and I didn't. Is there anything that you feel was maybe missing that you wish was there?
This sounds like almost arrogant, but no. But again, because of what we talked about earlier, I don't live in the past in the sense of, oh, I wish I would have done this, accept this, um, do everything the same except this. Because all along my life journey, it's kind of been, okay, this is the way it's happened. So I've accepted it as opposed to saying, except I could do it better. And I think, yeah, and I think that kind of sums up who I've become in my journey, the risks that we've taken, that I've taken, um, and let's see where God takes it from here.
That's a great place to be, but you know that there are many, many women who have a lot of
Oh,
accepts.
yes, yes.
So what would you say to them?
Don't give up. Yeah, I think once you get to the point of being in that space, and I can certainly understand depression or other kinds of circumstances that women can be in, is that you want to give up because that's the
Mhm,
easier thing to do is to give up. But once you
mhm.
can take those baby steps towards maybe a goal that you have or something else, then I think those little baby steps can help make it easier to maybe getting towards where you want to be. And it doesn't have to be big goals or big things, but just simple things like if you're feeling yuck and you haven't washed your hair for a week, you go and wash your hair and take a shower. You know what I mean? Because if
Mhm.
you're feeling really down, you don't have the energy and it's well, why should I? And so I think that to try to take baby steps to even with your own personal care, that's where it starts. And then once you start feeling better about how you look, what you do, all those things, then you can give some of your time and energy to others. But until then, you can't, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Those small victories are
Yes,
so important. I totally agree. And that looks different for each one
for
of
each,
us.
each person, certainly, certainly.
Yes. But yes, that is so true. And it's true, like, there's some days I don't put on my face.
Well, no, and some days you just feel like you want to stay at home day, and that's what you do, and you don't feel like, yeah,
But when I do, it does. I look in the mirror and I just feel better. And even if it's just for myself.
yes.
I know my husband has even said that to me. Well, why don't you just put on your face for me? Because aren't you just
Exactly.
happy with my face?
Yes. Yeah.
And not to say that we need to wear makeup, but you know what I'm
Yeah, I'm
saying. Like
saying, yeah.
a little bit of, we have to exercise self-care,
Hmm.
which, eating healthy and exercise but we also have to practice self-love,
Hmm.
which I think goes beyond the self-care, like doing our hair, like you say, like doing those little things that just show that we love ourselves. Just like our kids, we send them to school, we probably will comb their hair and put them in a cute little dress or little pants set or whatever,
Yes.
and brush their teeth and, make sure that they're clean because we love them. And yes, if we exercise that self-care and self-love for ourselves, I think that would make a huge difference. Yes, those little steps.
And find someone who can be supportive of you, because you can't do it on your own.
How do you do that?
How do you find someone? I think,
Yeah.
I I guess depending what people like to do, volunteering sometimes gets you out there and you're in an environment where you're giving some of your time,
Hmm.
and that can reflect back on you from the people that you're sharing your time with. That can be helpful to boost your self-esteem, because yes, I can do this. And it can be volunteering in a senior's home or a YMCA, or just anywhere that you can be there as a person to have interactions with others. I think the longer a person stays by themselves, if they're struggling, the harder it is to get back out there.
That's a really good point. Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate your stories, sharing, how it's affected you and what you've chosen to do with it. In this last couple minutes here, is there anything else you'd like to share to our audience to encourage them, empower them, or enable them to live their best life?
I think most of the things we've touched on in one way or another. Um, Discouragement, I think, is one of the worst diseases, if you like, because it's a disease, or it can be a disease of the mind. And sometimes our mind can play tricks on us in the sense of discouragement, 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 and it can be hard to get out of that pattern. And so for me, if I'm having an off day, listening to music that
Mm,
uplifts me makes a difference. For me, spending some quiet time, um, for those people that have a belief system, just spending time, either in prayer. If you don't have a belief system, then there is, everyone has something that attracts them to, um, what's the word I'm looking for? To give them a sense of some kind of peace. And I
mhm,
think peace is so key. But when you're discouraged, you can't find that peace.
mhm.
And so I think discouragement is a disease that's very common, because the expectations of being a super mom, super dad, super worker, super, 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 super everything is wearing people down.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, so I think if you can get rid of that discouragement, as hard as that might be, and again, taking those baby steps that we talked about before.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I believe that many women will walk away with some nuggets of things that they can do to start working through some of these issues. And thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. You're a dear friend. Love you to bits. And thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me on your show, and like I say, it was interesting that you were going to be interviewing me because I have the Hello with Margo show where I'm interviewing people. So it's been a different side of the screen, if you like. Thank you
Yes,
for having me.
absolutely. And we will share your information as well. It will be as when we do the video editing as well to include your chapter and your link to your show.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, we're very excited. I'm sure that they will be very inspired by your interviews as well.
Well, thank you. Yes. And the people that I've interviewed all have a story, and some of them are very difficult stories. And so I think that for your viewers and your listeners to be able to listen to some of those stories can also give them some encouragement, because they're all based on stories that are in people's lives and real
Yes.
lives in terms of what they've had to go through.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you again, Margo.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.